Hello everyone, welcome back, Patrick here. In this week's SPAC review, we are going to look at Microvast, which is going to be merging with THCB. This is one of the companies that people have been looking into for quite a while, and they had announced a letter of intent, but finally, after quite a long time, they announced a definitive agreement early last week. So now we can finally have the information to analyze the company. So in this video, I'm going to look at what they were doing before, what they're going to be doing after the merger, the revenues and valuation, and how am I going to be playing with it. I mean, this company has a lot of potential, I'll be honest with you guys, but this is the battleground of the future. I mean, there are so many different competitors in the battery space that it's very, very difficult to pick out a winner. So I hope that this video helps you a little bit see where we are at in this battleground. Now, please remember, like and subscribe, it really helps out. And also, as usual, quick reminder, you can get $50 with SoFi if you open a money account and deposit $500, and then another $50 if you open an investment account and deposit $1,000. So let's get started with the review. Alright friends, let's get started with the basics of Microvast. What are they doing? They are making electric vehicle batteries for the commercial space. So stuff like trucks, vans, buses, even mining trucks. Right, so this is going to be the industry of the future because we all know that this is the inflection point right now where there's going to be more and more electric vehicles on the road, and this creates a massive opportunities for these companies because we are going to need millions and millions of batteries every year to store this energy in these vehicles, right? So this is why this is going to become one of the most competitive industries, and we really don't know right now who's going to end up winning the race because they're all fighting for the same things, creating more energy density on the batteries, lower charging time, of course. Then the life cycles is the number of times that the battery can charge and recharge before there's like damage that's caused and you can't use it anymore, it needs to be replaced. Then of course you have the safety, you don't want the battery to catch on fire, which used to happen. And then of course you need to keep the cost down. The costs have come down a lot over the past 10 years. So you have a lot of different companies that are working on these, right? LG Chem, CATL, Panasonic are currently the top three. And as you guys can see, there's a huge list of companies that are making electric vehicle batteries right now. Microvast is going to be one of them. They already have some revenues and they plan on ramping up their production over the next few years. Now, what you have to understand about all of this, right, is that we're kind of stuck between two eras of technologies. So the solid state battery is the next generation. This is what companies like Quantumscape are working on, right? So no one is at that point yet. Even Quantumscape, which has had breakthroughs in this technology, they're not able to produce it yet. That's why they're not going to be able to manufacture it until at least 2027. So no one is here yet. A lot of the companies are either producing the conventional batteries or kind of like semi-solid state batteries. And this is where companies like this one come in, is that all these companies have kind of like incremental improvements over conventional batteries. It's not quite yet this one, which is going to be the next generation. So just keep that in mind, right? This is why, I'm not a huge fan of the batteries companies right now because we don't know who's going to end up winning that race to the solid state batteries. Now, if we look at the basics of the transaction, right, they are going to be getting $282 million from Tuscan, which is the SPAC, $540 million from the PIPE. So in total, they should get about $800 million in this transaction, which will help them a lot in building their new facilities. Now, the company, they were underwritten at $3 billion, but then when you subtract the amount of money that they were going to have, it is about a $2.4 billion valuation, which we'll look at more later on. Now, if you look at it, like the SPAC shareholders are only going to get 9%, and the PIPE is going to get 18%. You guys know that I'm not a huge fan of that. So I hope you guys understand that when we're looking at these battery companies, it's going to be extremely important to look at their current technology and see if they're working on small incremental improvements or if they're going straight for the next generation solid state batteries that are going to have much, much higher energy density and of course are going to be able to sustain much longer driving distances. But still, when it comes to the current generation, I mean, Microvast is one of the companies that is doing a lot of improvements to the current technology. If you look at it, their first generation battery batteries in 2011, because this company has been around for over a decade, so they have a lot of experience. Well, the density was only 95 watt-hour per kilogram, which is very, very little compared to their latest technology in 2019, where they brought this to 270 watt-hour per kilogram, right? So that's a massive difference, and that's why the current electric vehicles are much better than they were 10 years ago, and hopefully in 10 years they'll be even better. Now, the company has recently won the R&D 100 award for their next generation of cell technology, right? So they're going to bring it to 330 from 270, and this is going to come out in 2022. So they're going to be building a factory in Tennessee, and they'll start to mass produce this new generation of battery packs. Now, the company is very interesting because they're what's called vertically integrated. There are companies that specialize in one part of the process. Like Romeo Power mainly does the packs, right? And then they sell it to the other companies. But this company does everything. They build the batteries, the cells, the modules, and then they assemble it as packs, and then they'll be selling it to other companies that are going to be needing those for their commercial vehicles. Anecdotally, the company's battery packs were used in the buses at the 2018 Winter Olympics. So apparently this went flawlessly, and the reason why I'm showing you this is not because that's really impressive, but the thing is that the company's technology is validated. It's not like the company is coming out of nowhere. The company has some revenues. In 2020, they had 100 million revenues. In total, currently, they have 28,000 battery systems in operation, 3.8 billion miles driven. They're in 19 countries, 160 cities. They have 1,800 employees, 550 patents. So as you guys can see, it's not like the company is just a pre-revenue startup. They are already in the market right now, and they're at the point where now they need money to actually ramp up their production and become one of the bigger players. It's time to talk about the revenues, and this is one of the big positives for the company. They have a very nice trajectory for their revenues in the next several years, and the company should do very well. But on the flip side, the issue that I have with the company right now, which gives me some red flags, is the fact that there is not one page in the presentation that talks about their expenses, the R&D that they're going to be doing, and also the capital expenditures to build these factories to mass produce the batteries. In fact, if you look at intended use of proceeds, you have the debt repayment. So how much are they going to be spending on their debt? How much debt do they have? The fact that there's no balance sheet on this presentation is very, very strange and does bring some red flags, because we really don't know, when's the company going to become profitable and break even, right? So I've never seen something like this. This is something that's missing, and I really, really hope that they give us an update between now and the merger. This is kind of incomplete in my opinion. If we look at the revenues though and just focus on that, it is positive because the company already has between 1 billion and 1.5 billion in contracted revenue between now and 2027. These are companies that want this technology, and as I mentioned before, this is a huge opportunity because this industry is going to need millions of batteries. So all the companies in this industry, as long as they can produce them, are going to have some sales, including Microvast. So right now, they have this contracted revenue, but of course they have other contracts that are currently being negotiated, and they will get more in the future. So they will make a lot more than 1.5 billion over the next 7 years. If we look at how this plays out, last year they had 101 million in revenues. Then in 2021, they predict that they're going to have 230 million in revenues, of which right now there's 44 million that's contracted. So the other ones, I guess, are currently being negotiated. And as the company starts to have those factories that are going to be able to produce more batteries, they're going to be able to fulfill the backlog of the contracted revenues that they have right now. And so by 2025, they should get about $1.4 billion in revenue, of which currently 355 is contracted. So that means that the contract is kind of in stone already. When we look at the breakdown of revenue, it gets really interesting. The company breaks it down as commercial vehicles, which is going to be their main specialty, then the battery components, and the energy storage solutions. This is why it's so powerful having your own proprietary technology, because then you can license it out to other companies and get a lot of extra revenues this way. I always like that a lot better than other companies that license it and then manufacture. Right? So I hope you notice the difference here. When it comes to this company, right now they are focusing on the battery packs for the commercial vehicles. But what's proprietary about it is that each of these companies that make batteries, they use different components. They all use the same principles, but by combining different chemical elements, it creates different performance. As we could see earlier in the presentation, they're bringing it from 270 to 330 in the next generation starting in 2022. So that's why when you look at the actual chart, right now in 2022, 460 million is going to come from the battery packs. But if you fast forward to 2027, 2.2 billion is going to come from the commercial vehicle battery packs, and then you have all the extra money. So in total, the battery packs are going to come to about 57% of their revenues, and everything else is going to come from the battery components they're going to license out to other companies and the energy storage solutions. Because what happens is, let's say that company is making cars. Well, they don't need battery packs from commercial vehicles. What they need is the technology that Microvast developed, and then they're going to adapt it to their own batteries, right? So it's the cell technology that matters here. Alright guys, we're almost done, but now we have to look at the valuation. Currently with a share price of $21.99, I'm getting a valuation of about $6 billion. So this is by getting the 300.5 million shares after the transaction. And then in the notes, I did see that they have 171 million in debt right now. So you really need to look at the notes. Sometimes some of the information is hidden there, right? So they're going to spend 40 million on the transaction expenses, and then they will repay 30 million in debt. Now, if you look at it, there's going to be 9% of the company that's going to be owned by the SPAC shareholders, so like us, and then there's going to be 18% that is the PIPE investors. You guys know that I don't like when there's a huge ratio discrepancy like this, because all of these PIPE investors bought in at $10, and for you, if you want to buy in right now, it costs you $22. So there's a huge imbalance in the risk versus reward. I do not like that, right? If the share price goes up, once the lockout period is over, these guys can lock in their profits by selling, and that creates selling pressure. So when it's at 2-to-1 ratio like this, I personally do not like that. That's another negative for the company in the short term. If we look at the graph, I mean, the company went from about $15 before they announced the definitive agreement, and then it really shot up over $22 after that. This is a company everyone has been waiting for. Everyone knows that the battery industry is going to be fairly hot, and what people are doing right now is they're comparing it with Quantumscape. Quantumscape, as I said earlier, is a completely different type of company because they are working on, and they have achieved breakthroughs for the next generation of batteries. Well, Quantumscape right now, remember the share price has gone up as high as $132. And even now that it's gone back down to $44.90, this gives them a market cap of 16 billion, right? So that's why people want to compare Microvast and some of the other battery makers to Quantumscape, even though like it's apples and oranges. They're not working on the same type of technology. If Quantumscape is successful, right, they are going to vastly outgrow Microvast, in my opinion. But so we have to analyze them separately. I don't think that you can compare Quantumscape valuation at 16 billion and feel like, oh wow, this company at 6 billion is still cheap, right? So you have to analyze them independently. And I feel like at 230 million for Microvast, right now the share price is a little high, right? But this is the market we're in right now. All of these companies are extremely high, and you kind of have to base it on how are they going to be doing in 5 years. Can they get to those revenues in 2027 where they'll make over $3 billion in revenues, at which point the current valuation of 6 billion would be very cheap. If we compare it, at the share price $21.99, the warrant price currently is at $6.80. So this leverage ratio of 3.23, which is kind of not great, right? A lot of the value has been added already in the warrants, so it's going to grow a lot slower than before. Like when it was at $15 before the definitive agreement, would have been a great spot to get into this company, but sadly, I mean, it was just rumors, and you guys know that I don't invest in rumors. Alright guys, now to wrap up, what do I think about this company? How am I going to be playing it? And does it get my seal of approval? I have to repeat what I said in the intro. This is not my favorite industry just because of the fact that we really don't know who's going to end up winning. We're kind of stuck between the current technology, which has incremental improvements, and then the next generation technology, the solid state batteries, that's going to have much higher density, and those companies like Quantumscape are working on, and they already have some breakthroughs on it. Now they just need to be able to figure out a way out to manufacture it. But they're not the only ones. There's a lot of very, very smart people are working on new advancements to this technology. There's a guy named John Goodenough, which is a 2019 Nobel Prize laureate, which is working with Hydro-Quebec to commercialize a glass battery, right? So as I mentioned, like there's a lot of different competitors in this industry and very, very smart people. And even though I've been doing a lot of research on it, I can't say that I'm an expert enough to tell you guys like who's going to win this race. That's not my specialty. I'm an investor, but I'm not specialist when it comes to the chemistry of batteries. You guys know what I mean? You have to do your own due diligence. You have to decide for yourself who's going to win. But if we look at like this company as an investment right now, I do feel like they have a lot of potential. They are very well positioned to sell millions of batteries over the next several years. And for that reason, they do get my seal of approval. I'm very, very interested in this company. Now, I don't know where they'll be in 10 years when the next generation comes in. But for now, I do feel they'll be very successful. And because they'll be getting all of this revenue, maybe they'll be able to do a lot of R&D and develop their own technology. We'll have to see over the next few years. If we look at it, right, they went from $15 before the definitive agreement as high as $25. Now, I do think that this is a good play, short term and long term. It started to retrace. Now it's at $21.99. If I can get this company like anywhere under $20, I'm going to be all over it. And how I play these companies usually, when I'm not exactly sure if it's going to go up a lot between now and the merger, is I'm just going to put a stop loss where I'm comfortable. So if it keeps dropping, either I'm going to get stopped out and not lose really a lot of money, or I can dollar cost average down if I want to build a bigger position. And then I do anticipate that as we get closer to the merger, this company should have a nice little run up. I mean, I don't know how high it's going to get. As I mentioned before, I do not see this as the next Quantumscape. I don't think that there's going to be like huge investors pouring in tens of billions of dollars in this company where Quantumscape went to $130, right? So I don't see that happening with Microvast, but I do think that there can be some nice little run up before the merger. And if anything, right, in the next few years, it's going to grow nicely. If they can get anywhere close to $3 billion in 2027 in revenues, the current valuation of $6 billion is like very, very cheap in the grand scheme of things. So that's how I'm going to be playing it, right? I'll try to open a position. Sadly, as usual, right now it's a little bit too high. I don't really like that it's above $20. But what can you do? These companies right now, they just go up so quickly. If you blink, you miss them. So that's why I'm going to open a small position. And if it drops, then I'll add more shares to it. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. How are you going to be playing this? And I'll see you guys in the next video.